My name is Sagat Pokhrel, no preferred pronouns.
Hi, do we have Swijit here? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I didn't get your introduction. Okay, I guess they're not on the call, so while I go look for them, let's just yeah, I think things, if you have not left your speaking order in the text space, please do that. Before the start of each speeches, please do introduce yourself, stating your name, your preferred gender pronouns, and your preferred method of taking POIs. Congratulations on getting this far. Good luck on the round. Yeah, so give me a minute and we'll start. Okay, so yeah, we can start with the first proposition speech. I'm ready whenever you are. I'll be leaving timestamps in the chat, but you can also time yourself. Good luck on the round.
Hello, can I confirm that I'm both visible and audible?
Clearly.
Okay, great. My speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. Panel, a life trapped inside the tower is one that gives you zero personal liberation, freedom of movement, and access to your loved ones and friends. We think, as an incredibly skilled gamer who has the possibility of succeeding, it doesn't make sense to give up trying and to cave into the unjust oppression of a higher power. 3 pieces of setup before I move on to my argumentation. Firstly, just really quickly on clarification, how does the game work? So either like you spend time in the game or you just die altogether. If you die in the game, we see that you die altogether, and that the game is designed with an intent to trap you inside, right? Like the game designer wanted you to surrender to the power that they possess, to stop fighting and to give up. Eventually, this is for their own selfish gratification, as their happiness is built upon everyone in the game and their sufferings. Secondly, on characterization, who is the gamer? We see that from the info slide, it's fair for us to say that they're like extremely skilled and experienced. Their skill level improves as like they play on like with the game, right? And they either and they've like played this game before, because that's why they're a skilled gamer, right? Because they've played like easier versions, easier levels of this game before. It's just that now the level of difficulty has increased and the stakes are higher because your life is on the line. 2 is that your past experiences suggest that you're able to kill like a lot of monsters and have escaped floors, but not like 100 floors, maybe like 50, maybe 60. You can like, it's also been cleared by other players too who are trapped in here with you, and it's possible for you to like devise strategies with them together. So typically we see that these sort of players only play these games for the adrenaline, for the thrill of it, because they know what they're getting into when they like chose to like pick up the remote control and like play this game. So Third piece of setup, like how do you plan to get out of this game? We say that we're going to be smart and strategize and not just like wing it and go for it, right? This includes A, studying all the floors and the monsters and the bosses, B, creating alliance with other players trapped, sharing your skill sets, your resources, and organize for success. And C, take one level at a time and regroup and re-strategize before progressing further. So that is my setup. Now on to my arguments. It's two main things. Firstly, on the principle, and secondly, on the likelihood of success and how even if we don't success, why like we still have a social responsibility to
POI?
try. Sure.
Does the proposition acknowledge that the info site mentioned that these players are chosen arbitrarily, meaning at random?
Yes, like they're chosen from this world at random, but like if you're an experienced gamer, it means that you want to live for it means like you like the thrill of it. And so I don't see where you're trying to go with the POI. Back to my speech, the arguments. Firstly, on the principle of fighting for one's personal liberation and why that is important. It's the concept that humans are born free. You didn't choose to be stuck here, but now that you are, you get to decide how your life goes and what decisions you choose to make, right? You get self-determination, that you as a player are obviously a person that likes a challenge, you're self-determined, and you choose to get into this game because of the fun, thrill, excitement, and like not being like that afraid of death. The reason people keep going back to this game, even though it's a danger to their life, already logically indicates that you have autonomy to decide how and why you live. More importantly, as an average individual living in the society, the player most likely has like friends and families, social relations that they do care about. While being trapped, their loved ones worry about their freedom and their well-being. And like sure, like maybe they can see you with your VR helmet, but the whole day they can do nothing about it, and it's just like very cruel. But we see that in ops world, you're surrendering your own control in your own life in a VR when your ability to survive is dependent on how the game evolves. Referring to the info side, yes, if you don't attempt to beat the tower, you allow like people to live a chill, peaceful life. But is this like life worth living? Because you're limited of your freedom of movement. Like A, you're unable to move without consent. B, you're like as an average individual, you have social and familial relationships outside of the game. If you stay thinking you're not going to die, you lose out many, many, many other things that you live for, your family, your friends, your loved ones, in a world where you can't like probably like access these things that you live for, the things that you love, the things that you love doing. It could potentially be a lot more problematic life when you're just trapped inside this tower. So on principle, the conclusion is that you are reclaiming and regaining your control instead of allowing other like externalities to decide your life for you. Secondly, on the likelihood of success. We see that it's a very dangerous game, challenging, but you're also trapped with other skilled players, or else like they wouldn't be able to get to this level in the game in the first place. So they're also like pretty skilled, because that's like rationally how games are designed. So like strategies you have to do, like you can't just beat the tower without a plan. You have to learn all the floors thoroughly, build alliances, combine skill sets, take one floor at a time, etc. So given the skill that you have and the fact that this player is most likely not afraid of death given they're playing this game, it isn't intuitive, simply put, to just give up and not even try, as their skill is likely to help them to be very successful in beating the tower either way. And they also have like those counterparts that they can form alliances with to help. So then, worst case scenario in our world, what if we fail? On principle, at least you did not fall for the tyranny that imprisons you as a free person, and their primary goal is to of this game designer is to take away your freedom, right? Not your life, because they do keep you alive if you don't attempt to escape, but it's the freedom. And like even if you fail, your ability and your example of trying and not just giving up serves as an extremely valuable example for other people who will come after you and be trapped. So let's talk about social responsibility. We tell you that humans are social beings. We come from a society where our roles and our contributions are part of a greater collective. If you have the skill set and other people, sure.
You cannot strategize because you don't know how the next level looks like. It's a common sense, even if you never ever played the game.
First of all, you as an incredibly skilled gamer, we think you've played easier levels of this game before, so it's very likely you have a general idea of the things that you will try to you'll be facing against. But also you're very skilled. It's stated in the info side for a reason. You have your counterparts to work with you. You're obviously not just gonna go for it without a plan. Okay, back to my speech. We think that if you have the skill set and others don't, then you have the responsibility to help them, because like they won't be able to escape on their own even if they wanted to, right? As an incredibly skilled gamer, you have a social responsibility to complete the task of beating the tower, like given like of the other people who don't have it, they're equally trapped. And even if the actor doesn't have their own social responsibilities in the real world, the other people trapped in the game with them might. And as an individual with their like incredibly immense skills, they have the responsibility to help those around them and get out by at least trying to beat the tower, even if not for themselves, for like their other people. So then the conclusion of this argument is that because you as an incredibly skilled gamer, you're able to like pre-think, and then you can do it like you can beat the towers like floor by floor. So depending on each challenge the floor proposes to you, it's like you're able to like devise a plan that fits more like logically with it. So then the conclusion to this is that like the likelihood of success is going to be, of everyone who's stuck in the tower, you are the one who is most likely to be able to succeed in it. And even if you fail, on principle, this is a very good example for the like people in the future after you. So what have I told you in my speech? Firstly, I've given you 3 pieces of very clear setup and framing as to how this debate should be taken. Secondly, on arguments on the principle of fighting for one's own personal liberation and why that is so especially important. And then secondly, on the likelihood of success and social responsibility. For all these reasons, I'm so proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. I will now be taking the first opposition speaker for their speech.
Okay. Sorry, is the speaker audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
So I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. All of these impacts Goff talks about does not matter when you die. Our pathway of victory as opposition is simple. First, you will die. Second, you can adapt and live a better life even when you are trapped in the game. Now, I would like to pose my first argument. Why risk aversion and preventing death ought to be the priority. The premise of this argument is simple. When you attempt to beat the tower, you simply are going to die. And notably, it's not just death in the game, because death in the game means death in real life. Proposition just abused the wording of the motion that says incredibly skilled gamer. First, note that the info slide clearly states you are picked arbitrarily. The motion states you are an incredibly skilled gamer, not necessarily skilled SAO gamer. Now, second, even if you don't buy that, I'll prove you 5 structural reasons why you're most likely to fail despite being an incredibly skilled gamer. Number 1, lack of predictability. The uncertainty of what lies beyond that 100 floor. The unpredictability of challenges makes it very hard for you to strategize and navigate each level. The game could include unknown variables, traps, and surprises that even skilled players cannot anticipate or even prepare for, especially when literally this is about clearing 100 floors filled with dangerous monsters and bosses. So the odds are literally near impossible. Prop cannot just say that they can strategize. No, you can't. Even in playing game, you just don't know what monsters are going to come to you. Now, second, even if you can beat initial levels of the game, know that you have to clear literally 100 floors with no second chance. You can't lose even 1 floor. This means even though you are skilled enough to beat the first, for example, 10 floors, the higher the floor, the more challenging the monsters and bosses become. This exponential increase in difficulty is overwhelming even for the most skilled players. Furthermore, I would like to note that because you are immersed in the game, resources are finite as always. That is to say, you will literally have to manage your in-game resources such as health, equipment, and abilities without the possibility of external replenishment. This is very hard to do. You might lose your sword. You might be injured from the last game. You might be tired. This means that the more steps you accomplish, the harder it is to survive the next one. I would like to note that you cannot just assert, oh, you will have full resources back again in another step of the game, because you are literally not a game character here. You are a human trapped in virtual reality. It is unlikely, again, to be that way. There's noting that we say, given style players, Sword Art Online players, are in a constant state of play, it is mentally and also physically exhausting. Now, fourth, you have to work with other players, which sometimes hinder your chance to survive. The thing here is, given that other players are also trapped and also to survive, most of the times building trust and effective teams is hard in high-stakes environment where betrayal and mistakes can lead to literal death. The thing is that everyone wants to live. You don't trust the other person. You want to sabotage them. For example, by using them as a shield to distract the monster. Now, this means two things. Number one, you are not just dealing with monsters, but also other players who might betray you. This means if you're an incredibly skilled to kill monsters, Golf has no fiat to say you have an excellent interpersonal skills to identify likely traitors in the group. Now, second, it just becomes hardly possible for you to divide your focus between killing your monsters and defending yourself from other players. Now, fifth, because you are literally not only a character but a human, you are prone to psychological weaknesses, especially in times of threat and high pressure. Things like PTSD, the fact that this is a virtual reality. You might be incredibly skilled when you are playing the game, but because the blood isn't real, but you might be traumatized by the amount of blood from the boss and monsters. The fact that you have never anticipated the monster would be 100 times bigger than your computer screen. The feeling of that real threat that you never got when you're playing the game. Because when you play the game, you can always have a second chance. You can always retry the levers. Furthermore, it can also be in form of group fights. When you get a reality check that other players are also in fact a threat, which I suggest has been proven to be the case in a lot of dystopian movies. For example, like All of Us Are Dead. This means you are psychologically bothered because you no longer know which ones you can trust and you are in this alone. Furthermore, you might feel traumatized when you see vivid reality that other humans are bitten to death by the monster, something you literally never saw before, because who would have? It also looks like you particularly feeling guilty to die because you are dead in real life, and that may affect literal loved ones. All of this means that players tend to be distracted by their emotional fatigue, making them unable to focus. Notably, these are 5 structural reasons on why an individual might die. Government can't literally cherry pick. They have to respond to all 5. Now, why is this argument winning in the first place? Well, number one, we don't rely on the fact that they are skilled. We prove why it is a POI. I'll explain it later. It is most likely that you fail by analyzing the nuance of the game. Now, second, this argument should be weight highest because all of their arguments are contingent to you living and being alive. It is the prerequisite of being able to do literally anything else. Now, I accept your POI.
Bob asserted that life itself has value without any proper explanation. Why?
Do you really want me to give a value for life? Well, it has because your life is literally your life. The thing is that there's really no second life after, for example, you die in a game. There is some worth. You have your loved ones. You still have, for example, your friends and so on. They're just stopping at loved ones. That's enough to keep you alive. That's enough to give meaning to your life. And this is now I would like to move on to my arguments. Now, the burden of government is uniquely high. They need to prove why they can win all floors. Losing one means you lose your life. Even by pure numerical value, it is 1 out of 100. The odds are significantly low. And that's why, as the individual, you have the interest to avoid death risk for 2 reasons. Number one, individuals just dislike pain. Notice that when you lose and get killed by a monster, it is an incredibly inhumane way to die. And you have to endure so much pain and trauma. This pain is intense. Sometimes you have to endure a slow death when the monster eats each of your body parts while listening to other players screaming in pain. This is highly painful proposition. That's too engaged to their POI too. Sorry, even if you don't, for example, value life per se, the pain itself is one that you ought to prioritize. Who would want to get eaten to death? Second, if you care about your family, even though staying there for a longer time might hurt them, not being able to return to them is the worst thing that happens to them. You might spend 1 year or 2 years waiting for other players to finally clear the game. Other skilled players that are trapped that want to take that risk. But what is worse is never coming back to see your loved ones ever again proposition. Thus, this argument is most important by the metric of certainty. First, certainty, we prove it is certain enough that you are going to die. And second, pain. Even if you miss your family, that pain is in no way comparable to the emotional trauma and physical pain you have to endure while playing the game. Be more humane. Having said that, I would like to pose my second argument. Why the comparative is much better. It's much better. The premise of this argument is simple. Humans can adapt. There is a society there and they can adapt. Now, there's 2 contexts. First, in Sao, the immersive technology blurs the lines between virtual and real worlds. The senses are fully engaged, making the virtual experiences feel as real as the real ones. This means that they can shift a player's perception of reality where the virtual world becomes their primary reality. Now, this means the player can start identifying with their in-game avatars, leading to changes in self-perception. And number two, humans have a remarkable ability to adapt to new environments. In Sao, players gradually adapt to the rules and lifestyle of this virtual world. This adaptation leads to a level of acceptance for the virtual world as a real society. Now, why is this not a contradiction? Well, notably, what we're trying to say is that trust issues mostly arise from a high-pressure environment. And when you are playing with other players to beat monsters, this is just the same as real life. When you are in an imminent situation, you don't know people's real personality and care about it. Thus, you can adapt. And this is why we firmly stand pro and firmly stand con. Sorry.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. I will now be taking the second proposition speaker for their speech.
Hi, can I confirm that I'm audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Judge and panel, how skilled the gamer is, how hard the game is not in the scope of this debate. And this is something that side opposition does not understand. This debate isn't about how easy it is to clear the game or how good you can train yourself to be, but whether a life trapped inside for the rest of your life is worth the possibility, no matter how slim, of being able to escape and be free. A few rebuttals before I move into my arguments and extension on top of my first speaker's points, right? So first, opposition continuously capitalizes on the idea that humans can adapt to a prison. The reason why individuals are alive and live is because there's hope and freedom that allows them to access a variety range of human experiences, including but not limited to talking to friends and family, experiencing joy, happiness, and failure, right? Being trapped in a prison and being threatened by the imminent threat of death means that these individuals do not get to experience any of that, right? Ob concedes that life is important because you have loved ones and life is irreversible. So how would you be around for your loved ones on opposition's world when you are in your VR helmet and as alive as a plant in their homes, right? Next, they talk about how freedom is not as important as life. Ob is saying, I'll take that later, that on principle, people in Gaza should not fight for their freedom and instead just live in the prison that Israel has built for them because they can adapt within this prison, right? Life in SAO, the Sword Art Online, is a simulation, and any accomplishments within the game might be seen as inherently meaningless because they don't affect the real world, right? When POI'd about the meaning of life, they tell us that, oh, do you really want me to explain this to you? Loved ones and family. And that's why life has value. Side Ob literally just explained it to you. That's why you want to try and escape, because when you're trapped inside the game, you are sure physically alive, but you're not there for them. You cannot interact. They cannot feel you, communicate, or have any meaningful conversations or bring any meaning to your life at all, right? Now onto my arguments. First main argument, why resistance and challenge to the oppression of the game and value resistance is inherently valuable on its own, right? We think that the act of resistance itself can be seen as an affirmation of dignity and autonomy, right? The choice to fight against oppression, even at the cost of life, can be valued over a longer life lived in subjugation, right? Those who die resisting oppressive systems leave behind this kind of legacy that inspires future generations to continue the fight, potentially leading to change that they could not achieve in their lifetime. And that's the structure that I'll take you right after this, and that's the structure that you're trapped in without your consent and threaten you to not leave with your life, and that in itself is violence. I'll take your POI.
Does the opposition acknowledge that the info slide mentioned that there's already a society that allows you to live a life, so you're not living in a prison? Monsters can't escape from the 100 level thing.
Even if there is a society inside just to note that inside the info slide, it only says that there are other people inside and not that there's an established society. But we think that even if there is an established society, your family and friends and the life that you have spent, who knows how long building and developing for the literally past of your entire life, we think that that is completely lost. And that in itself is a huge loss on its own that we as side of proposition do not want to risk losing, which is why we want to take the kind of risk. But I will continue explaining in my speech why we think even without just considering the individual's life, it's still important. We think that like this kind of structure that you're trapped in is violence. So when you're actively defying and kind of clearing each floor as you go, they are losing control. The game developers and whoever is oppressing you, like, they cannot threaten you with your death. And what other power do they have over you, right? When you unite other players and you get out together, you weaken the legitimacy of the tyranny altogether because violence is their only tool and you are not scared of breaking it. Next, the concept of power, right? Like my first speaker said, the game expects you to scare you into compliance, and the scare being you die if you escape and fail, right? The power in this motion is gained by the game developer when they know that you will do whatever they tell you because you are scared of dying, right? But if you're not even afraid of that and you just want to go out and gain freedom, then what other worse thing can they do to you? What other power do they have in you, right? If you're not afraid of death, their ultimate punishment for you escaping, then there's nothing they can do to make things worse for you. And this is precisely the moment when you defy them and show that you're not complying with their rules and you're not playing on their terms, you're playing on your terms, right? So what's the impact on this, right? We think on a smaller scale in terms of acting in the incredibly skilled gamer's best interest. We think we're able to prove to the world that I am not playing on any terms whatsoever, that I am setting my own terms, and this is what brings my life meaning, right? But on a much larger scale, in terms of what we're able to bring to society as a whole, not just within the virtual reality, but also outside. We think, we're able to inspire other people and show that we're not just following whatever terms that they give us, and we're not just going to give up and like bow down to the game developers' rules and that this like completely violent and immoral game that they have set for us, right? We're showing these game developers and the rest of society that at the end of the day, I'm going to set my own rules and I'm not going to play by whatever jail and prison you set for me, right? And we think that this is the ultimate impact of our world, and this is why we think our world is the ideal situation for this incredibly skilled gamer, right? Note that the other people who are inside this virtual reality prison, we think that we're also, when these people like collectively realize that they are not scared of death, and we want to kind of defy this kind of rule and live on our own terms, we think that collectively we are able to defy the game developer and oppressor, and me as the gamer is able to inspire the other players inside the game to also act like me and be able to set my own terms and live my life on my own without being restricted by something that I didn't even agree on, right? Now let's look at the comparative, right? We see that on-side opposition, you're trapped in this virtual reality where you just exist, right? There's no meaning to your life as you just want to go on to the next day, right? And a life without any hope or any sense of purpose is meaningless. As we live, we debate, we dream, we hope, and we want to make something out of ourselves, right? But no matter how well you quote adapt, the reality is that you will be trapped here forever, living on the game developer's terms and the oppressor's terms. And whatever the oppressor does to you, you will have to follow, because at the end of the day, you're scared of dying and you're scared what happens to you. So they are they have full control over you and your emotions and your life, right? So, but whereas in our world, we see that you're actually able to do something for the greater good and bring meaning to your life. Last chance for Opt to have a POI. Okay. Whereas in our world, we see that you're actually able to do something for the greater good and bring meaning to your life, right? And we think that at the end of the day, as this gamer, we don't want to just live the rest of our life just stuck in here without any meaning and just like throw the rest of our life to waste without ever seeing our loved ones or friends ever again, simply because of I was arbitrarily chosen to play in this game. And because of that, I'm just going to give up and stay in here. And I guess I'm just going to try to adapt. And just a reminder that note the oppressor obviously knows that me as a gamer have two choices, which is between trying to escape and risking dying, or just trying to stay in here and adapt, right? They want to make life as bad as it can for you. So the oppressor is not going to make it easy for you to adapt inside, right? So what have I told you in my speech today, right? I've rebutted side opposition's points about how their entire case is built upon how humans can possibly adapt. I've told you why our world is able to provide a more higher meaning and greater meaning for me as the gamer, which is why today's motion must stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. I will now be taking the second opposition speaker for this speech.
Okay. Judge.
Yes.
That I am. My speech will start in 3. Assuming that I am, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Now, they said that life does not have value itself. This is laughable because life has no meaning. Freedom also does not have meaning. Meeting your loved one does not have meaning. Everything that they want does not have meaning. I'm going to serve some common sense of you. All human desires are derived from one source, that is human life. So yes, human life does have a value. But even if you don't buy that, the DPM does not engage with my LO. We tell you that we don't have epistemic access to determine whether a human values their life or not. They can't just assert that this actor's only reason to live is their loved ones or freedom. We engage in this in 2 rounds. One, in regards to freedom, we tell you that from the context side, is literally stated that society lets you live a life and monsters can't escape. The DPM didn't read the context side, so it is misleading when they say that it is a prison. You literally have freedom. You can go out and buy groceries and go to a club or whatever, especially when we tell you that virtual reality and physical reality has blurred lines. So it is not distinguishable. So over time, you don't necessarily feel trapped in a prison. Not that they're trivializing prison, but even so, they're offensive because they're inferring that all prisoners deserve death just because they're currently taken away from their freedom. This is not the case because we recognize prisoners even can find new meaning and purpose. They can build a new identity. Now, in regards to last one, we tell you that you can adapt. You can form societal structures and relationships. Guilds and communities arise. Note that we are engaging with the opposition's best case here. This is parallel with real life because when your communities live you to die, it is hard for you, but it doesn't mean that your life doesn't have meaning. Just like a man called Otto Movie, even though his wife meant a lot to him, he can't find another community and finally form an identity, a new meaning. The reason why you should buy this is simple, because the motion states that virtual reality we characterize since map that virtual reality has very blurred line with physical reality. Now, second, they said that there's moral responsibility for the players. Why literally you don't know the other players? No, you don't have the moral responsibility to other players. You're there arbitrarily. You hardly ever interacted with them. There's no reciprocal obligations to each other. You owe moral obligation to yourself because you contribute to your growth so far. You have purposes that may change. That's how your life ought to be prioritized. But even if you do know these other players, let's say, nobody is going to care whether to save their friends or not when their lives are at stake. When we try to go into this tower to survive, everyone just thinks for themselves because they go to the tower for one reason, so that they can live and so that they can be freed from the game. Now, in conclusion, thus far, government is only assuming that people have that the human's purpose to life is static. Now, what are we saying? Yes, now it may be your old communities. We suggest that you can't change how to form identity. Now, they also said that because we're gamers, we want thrill and stuff, and we choose to go to the world. Not only is this impossible, since it is arbitrary, no one can choose to voluntarily go there, but it's illogical because a normal person won't risk their lives and everything that they believe in for the thrill of it. The proposition is acting as if and additionally, the proposition is acting as if the thrill cannot be taken out through other activities and through helping others train for the game. Now, back to social responsibility, they tailed that prop can't say that we're doing nothing to help. Now, coaches don't play. So what does this mean? This means that you can train other guilds or other players who want to solve the tower. This way, you're helping transfer your knowledge on video games and tell them the general common and different types of obstacles given in the levels of games that you have experienced before, while still having your lives be safe. Now, why is this preferable to actually attempting to go through the game? Note that this motion never clarifies the skill of your other players who were chosen arbitrarily, as all we assume that because people are chosen at randomly, the other players might not be as skilled as you are. Now, why is this important? Because if you go into a game and die, then what happens except your later? All the knowledge that you own just disappear. No one has a mentor to guide them in the game. Then the newbie players will go to the game without knowing anything out of desperation, and everyone would just die. Now, we posit an alternative which utilizes your skills more than just attempting to beat the tower. This alternative is to be a coach to mentor and guide the players. This way, you don't risk yourself dying both in real life and in game, yet still progress the game to people who want to complete the tower. Now, what is your POI?
So opposition 1 said that life is important because you care about your friends and loved ones, and you just said life is important, so go to hell with friends and loved ones. So which one is it?
Okay, now we stand with what we said by life is important because you have your loved ones, because this is exactly why people want to escape the tower, right? So it is selfish if you want to keep your lives to yourself, because when you want to risk your life, knowing that there's another alternative in which you can escape the game in a way that does not ensure that your life is at stake, then you're making sure that your loved one does not grieve, because loss can be detrimental to a person. People can develop mental illnesses just because they lose someone. So if you truly do know the meaning of life, which is these people that you love outside of the game, then you would want to do it in a way that ensures your safety so that they're not also harmed. Now, moving on to my extension, progress can happen without needing to go to the tower. Before going on to this, I would like to call out something. The emotion states the house as a gamer. So therefore, our side is only explaining why it is beneficial to an individual, sad gamer, to not go to attempt and beat the levels of the tower. We don't have the fiat to explain why everyone shouldn't go and try to beat the tower. We're just saying this individual gamer should not. Now, number one, what happens to these people when they first get into the world? Now, they have a set goal in mind, and that's to solve the tower. People will try and fail as we live our lives in this game. This is a fact. And now, with you knowing the reason that there is another counterfactual in order that allows you to defeat the game without actually risking your life, then why would you do this? Because people do it for you. Number two, they have some memory of the past, and thus they will know how to operate in a civil society. And I believe this is important because these facts leave them at least a base on how to live together in an at least sufficiently harmonious manner. However, this is not the case when you go inside the tower, because everyone is for themselves. So even if you do build connections, it'll all be result to nothing when you go inside the tower. Now, few points of framing. Note that once a floor is completed, it is completed for an entire society, meaning you technically don't have to actually complete the tower individually to win the game and escape. If someone else does it, then you can also escape in the future. Now, the time ratio framing. It is important to acknowledge that the time ratio between the game and in real life is vastly different. There is a ratio of more than 1 to 1,000. Why is this significant? This means that though we acknowledge that there are other things to live for with the players, such as a loved one, a career goal outside the game, there is no urgency to get to them ASAP. Realistically, though the society inside of VR have lived a year, at minimum, only 8 hours has passed in the real world. When at minimum 1,000 years in the game has passed, only 1 year has passed in real life. By this point, seeing that there are already many players, surely a majority, if not all levels, will already be cleared. Now, second, why are we certain that there are going to be people to defeat the levels for you? There are people who might want to defeat the game. There are players who just want the recognition of solving the game. However, they're not just one person. Instead, there are multiple people to do it. This means that you don't have to risk your life. You can instead rely on others to solve this. Hence, also, you might be a skilled gamer. You might not necessarily have the same resources and manpower as they do. There are two scenarios that will happen. Number one, you're just generally outmanned and they solve the floor without you. This means that even if you risk your life, you won't be recognized for your hard work, and instead these guilds will. And number two, if you face these guilds on one floor, then you'll be outmanned and out-resourced. With the addition of needing to kill the monsters, you will have to kill the members of the guilds here. Guilds usually employ player killers to make it so that no one can complete the level before they do. It is to eliminate any distractions. The odds make it nearly impossible for you to succeed or to even live to see the day. In addition to that, it is important to acknowledge that though we are a gamer here, we are still living in the world of the simulation. This is based off a series, so it means that there is still going to be main characters. Now, logically, if you keep still, then these people are going to be able to solve it, and this is a high chance other than the guild. So thus far, we can see that there are two other people that are able to solve the game for you. Now, therefore, due to the things I've said before, I have never ever been prouder to stay by my side, and this exactly proves why if you do want to live a life, you should stand with our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Second speaker of the side opposition. I will now be taking the third speaker of the side prop for their speech.
Can I confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay, my speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. Judge. The concept of being trapped in a prison, of simple existing and surrendering to a tyrannical higher power instead of fighting for your freedom is simply a life not worth living and is not what fulfills the desires of an incredibly skilled gamer. And just that this opposition already loses this debate. So now let's talk about what's wrong with opposition, right? The really main argument they give us is that life is valuable. Life is valuable. Life is valuable. Op naively asserts again and again that life is irreversible, therefore it is important. But they do not discuss how individuals even derive happiness and self-satisfaction given our limited lifespans, right? They want to access more ranges of experiences, and that is only possible if you have the very freedom to make your own decisions, right? It goes against the oppressions that you are trying to force, that are trying to force you to surrender. And additionally, opposition continuously contradicts themselves when they keep claiming the importance of life and how that relates to your friends and family and loved ones, yet they then claim that friends and families are no longer important because your survival should be prioritized. Opposition cannot have both, and this contradiction totally just cracks the entire flimsy backbone of their case. Secondly, they say there's more pain in our world. The matter of the fact is that there's actually so much more pain in opposition's world, because you have people living totally meaningless lives, right? They told us that life is important and loved ones are important, but when you're trapped inside the game, yes, you are physically alive, but you are not there for your loved ones, right? There's no interaction, no communication, and there's simply just an empty shell of a person hoping to live another day, and that being it. The opposition also concedes that you will constantly live in the terror that the game has designed for you, right? Providing the analysis that you will see people struggle in the game. You will see people get eaten by monsters, meaning that even if you choose to live, you get terrorized by all this violence. So what happens eventually just means that you either get numb and become indifferent to other people's suffering, or you just lose your mind altogether in this limiting, terrifying prison. Judge. Know that this actor is not just an average person, right? They're someone who has the skill sets and traits of a gamer whose biggest fear is not necessarily death. They then claim to tell us, right? You actually do have freedom in this tower because you can go buy groceries. Judge, this tower is a prison. It does not matter how pretty it is a prison because you do not have the choice to exit the premises, and nor are you able to contact the people and things that actually inject meaning into your life. So now, what do we positively bring to today's debate? So firstly, right? Is the main burden of our side. How are we really able to fulfill what an incredibly skilled gamer would want, and how we are able to play into their best interest? Firstly, we're able to give them a more liberated and fulfilling life. Even though staying in the tower would allow you to live a more a surviving life, a life of survival, we don't think this is a life that an incredibly skilled gamer wants to live. Yes, they value their life, but at the same time, they care the most about the adrenaline, right? Playing for a thrill and for the excitement. And besides, as this incredible skilled gamer, you are likely to not be afraid of death anyways. It's clear that this actor is not one that lives to purely survive with a low risk as possible, but live life with meaning, with the adrenaline they chase, with their loved ones, and the commitments they care about. Essentially, opposition is just conceding, well, you just live, you just adapt. It doesn't matter if you're trapped in a prison, you are stripped of free dignity as a free human, as long as you live, right? Because life has value. On the comparative and opposition's world, you're trapped in this virtual reality where you just purely exist. There's no meaning to your life as you just want to go on to the next day. And overall, you live with life without any hope or any sense of purpose. You probably have loved ones and things you care about in the reality, but you are trapped in this world. So at the end of the day, we still think it is a meaningless life, and it is a life that this gamer does not want to lead. Not only this, right? I'll take one later. But you live a life of less happiness overall because there's a constant wondering of what would have happened if one were to take the other path. Next, we tell you that there's actually a huge likelihood and feasibility of success in our world. Because not only is the gamer as an individual incredibly skilled and is the utmost best, probably one of the only candidates out of all the people trapped in this game who will actually be able to beat this tower and beat this level, they also have the help of other players around them to strategize together, right? Yes, the game is becoming more challenging when we get to this level, but with all the knowledge and shared expertise of the players put together, we do not think that the chances of this success are impossible. And we don't think that this game was designed to be impossible to beat, right? So when you have all of the best players together, we think that beating the tower is likely regardless. So thus, now that we've proved that success is likely either way, the player is able to, one, of course, return to their normal life, reunite with family and friends, and all the things that make life worth living and is non-existent in this game. And so therefore, we are able to maximize their achievement and their happiness, which is what the incredibly skilled gamer wants. And as proposition, right, we are able to give you the ultimate best outcome that is possible in this debate. And this outcome is only possible in our world, in a world in which you are able to beat this tower, go back to a life of normalcy where you are reunited with your family, friends, and you actually have proper meaning in your life in which you are able to have your freedoms and your liberations. And this is the ultimate best case that is only possible in our world. And that is what we exclusively bring you. And I'll take your POI.
Your burden that you have not answered is why life purpose is static. Info slides state that you can live in a society, you have freedom. If your justification is that you can exit this game, neither can you exit real life.
Okay, so you guys are just trying to continuously claim as to why this life in the tower is actually free, right? But we think that just the fact that you have your life in the reality where your parents are, where your loved ones are, and where your actual commitments and like kind of like all the general things that make up your life are in this other place. Just the fact that even if you have like a peaceful life in this tower, it is already an infringement on one's freedom of liberation and one's freedom of movement, right? Because you're unable to exit the premises. You are stuck here no matter what. And no matter how peaceful, how pretty, how sugar-coated and wrapped up it is still a prison. And it is still, we still don't think it is a life that this actor wants to live. And thus we are fulfilling their desires in terms of like how to achieve like the most ultimate best case in this world. So, right, even in the worst case where you do fail, right? So what? As an incredibly skilled gamer, and as we've characterized before, your desire in life is not necessarily to live peacefully, right? To live like calmly, like, you know, maybe in a house, go on a few walks out every day, like do things like that, but to live on the edge, right? Constantly being filled with adrenaline rushes and exciting thrills. We think that we are fulfilling the desire of this actor, even in the case where one dies trying. So then, and then even in the worst case, we still fulfill their freedom of their liberation and their movement, right? Because you are fighting the tyrannical higher power, and you are breaking the system that they are designing specifically for you to surrender and for you to bow down to and be oppressed by, right? The game developer has created this game based on the nature of a fear for death. So when one is defying this tyrannical oppression, they're taking the fate of their life back into their hands and telling the game designer that no, I'm not just going to surrender to you, and I'm going to beat the very system that you have created for me to fail and for me to be oppressed by you. So then secondly, right, at the end of the day, there's a principle other than liberation, freedom, and like the likelihood of success that side opposition cannot bring down, which is the principle of fulfilling a social responsibility, right? As explained many times before, humans inherently have a social responsibility to utilize their own skill sets to help those around them who cannot help themselves. There are many others like who in this game who are trapped together with the actor, right? Who they have, even if you as an actor do not have responsibilities in the real world, they do, and they have people to go back to, right? So don't you think that as this actor, it is selfish when you have the skills, you have the experience, you probably most likely have the feasible like likelihood of success, but you let others who probably have much less of the ability to you watch them die failing rather than put in the effort and choose to take the risk and like take the first step to beat this level. And because of what we've told you today, how we are able to really achieve what this actor wants and in order to fulfill their best interests and overall just create a world with more meaningful lives, we've never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. I will now be taking the opposition third speaker for their speech.
Judge, am I both visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you very much for that. Let me quickly set my timer. Give me a second. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Here's the thing. I think that this China team is really just EPL. They just say that this is trapped in tyranny, oppression, and they gave you all these fancy and big words. But as Umar Fazlan once said, reality check, read the motion. Literally in this game, as clarified multiple times throughout our speech and even given by the cap himself, you can live in the society and the monsters won't go out. You can spend your life just like how you do in your physical reality. And we told you one characterization that was actually not disputed at all, which means it stands that there's a blurred line between this virtual reality, this game, and your physical reality. This means that you can live your life. It's not a prison that side government sees that it is. You can meet different sets of community. You can meet different guilds, different players, and etc. See that they actually strawman our entire case by just saying, oh, you get terrorized because you see people dying. Note, that is when you enter the game. That is when you try to be the hero and finish the tower. That is when you start being at the risk of death. But you can choose to actually stay with the society. You're not subjected to the battle with a monster. You don't have to. But the fact that the info slide says that monsters can't come out, it just suggests that the locations in this game are very different, separated enough for the monsters to not be able to reach the area that you're in. So we tell you that security and safety is ensured. And so far, you don't try to be the hero and attempt to complete the tower. Next, they said that, oh, you're in tyranny. Why? Because you can't exit the game. Well, honey, neither can you exit the real life. The same thing can be said. You can't exit the real life now. You're also arbitrarily born into this world. Some bad things happen, such as meeting some bad judges, but it doesn't mean that I'm in prison right now. Life is also random. Life is also arbitrary. You can be separated one day from your family, but it doesn't mean that you're just in prison. It doesn't mean that your life suddenly has no meaning. We tell you that they can form a new community, they can make a new identity. This is something that they never reported at all. Zero engagement from this. Check your note, Judge. By this alone, we already win the debate. Why? Because they never respond to any of Math's 5 structural reasons why you're going to die. The only justification that they have is repeating the fact that, oh, you're skilled. We tell you that the motion doesn't give fiat that they are skilled in playing this particular game. You cannot compare Candy Crush to Sword Art Online. This is the very fact that government just seems to ignore. And their entire benefit is contingent on the fact that you succeed in finishing the 100 levels of the tower. We tell you that no, it is near impossible to finish this game. It is near impossible to succeed. 5 structural reasons. First, unpredictability. 2, human fatigue. 3, PTSD. 4, bad teamwork. And 5, finite resources. All of these points have actually never been engaged with at all. We tell you that this game is designed to make you confused, designed to make you so that you cannot finish the game. And even if you're a skilled player, there will be traps, surprises, and monsters that you yourself would not even anticipate. You add this onto the fact that you yourself are still human. You get injured, you see death, making your mental state horrible. And then you suddenly meet bad teammates, making it so that you don't trust anyone, that you want to try finish the game yourself, and you're just having a barrier around you, making it so that you have finite resources, and eventually you just die in the 50th stage at best. This is the type of world that we see happening. Just because you're skilled, it doesn't mean that you'll succeed. This has not been responded at all by their side. We gave you 5 structural reasons against their side that, oh, there's no reason. But even if not, then we just weigh the arguments. First, we tell you irreversibility is the most important. You can't retry the game. Even if there are possibilities you can win, it just takes you one mistake to die. All you have to do is slip on a slippery ground and the monster will kill you. That's all it takes. You cannot restart the game. And because of this, your life is on the tightropes, especially asymmetric monsters, I'll take that later, much stronger than you. They're literally like 100 times bigger than the screen that you normally play with on your laptop. They have most likely harsh faces with blood dripping down their teeth, something that you are not used to seeing. All of these mistakes, plus the fact that you have finite resources and you are literally human, not an immortal god within the game, makes it so that once you die, you make a mistake, this monster just wipes you out and you are no longer on the face of this earth. Second, severity of impact. You don't only die, you'll die in pain. This is virtual reality. Notice that when you lose and get killed by a monster, it's incredibly inhumane. You have to endure so much pain and trauma. You have to hear the blood sloshing around. You have to see the teeth sinking into your bones, and the pain is just super intense. And you sometimes even have to endure a slow death later. When the monster eats each of your body parts while listening to other players screaming in pain, this is highly painful. And that's to actually engage with so many different things that they have already said before. So even if you don't value life per se, the pain itself is one that you ought to prioritize. So even if you don't buy this ridiculous framing that, oh, this person doesn't value their life, pain aversion should be the metric within this victory, because no one wants pain, even though they don't want to live. I'll take that POI.
So you want other players to die for you first, then you can make your way out after hundreds of other players died for you. So is that a life you want to live as a human being with moral standards?
Yeah, we don't care. Why? Because it's an actor motion. You're not doing this for pragmatic purposes to, oh, I want to save everyone. No, that's stupid. Why? Because you're the most important one in your life. Do you think you want to sacrifice your life and not see anyone else just because you try to be the hero? Of course not. This is an actor motion. Read it. Next, their biggest claim is that life has no meaning. This is contingent to the assumption that the actor only cares about family in their real life. Yes, we agree, families might be important, but it's not the only reason to live. Humans inherently, they can adapt. That's why when your family dies, you can find other communities, you can redefine new meanings. We see that this is parallel to both virtual reality and in real life. Just because you're isolated from your family in the virtual one, it doesn't mean that you can't live your life there. No, you can find new hobbies. Even prisoners can form meaning by learning other skills, even though they're imprisoned away from their family. We see this happening in real life as well. Just because your parents, for example, divorce and they're not part of your life anymore, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly just gonna kill yourself, right? No, you're gonna find new meaning. You might even find a partner. You'll find a career which suits you. This is all things that can happen within the virtual world as well. Note that this motion say it's a society. This society where you can find new loved ones, you can find friends, you can find things to do, protect the time. And they say that freedom is important. Life is the prerequisite to freedom. Freedom is not the absence of the material things in your life, but how you make your life purposeful. This is freedom. Freedom is actually taking into control your life, even though the odds might be stacked in your favor. And we see this happening within the virtual world. Why? Because we see that this world, although you don't finish the game and you're just there, it doesn't mean that you can't find meaning. It doesn't mean that you can't find purpose. With that, I've never been prouder to stand con. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. I will now be taking the up reply for yes.
Sorry for the inconvenience, but can I go to the bathroom before my speech?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. Assuming that I'm visible and audible, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. In A Man Called Otto, Otto's life was once all about her wife. When his wife died, he was extremely damaged. But at the end, he can find a new community, a new meaning. Government saying that just because you're taken away from and trapped in a new environment means you should die is definitely a slap to those survivors out there who have been arbitrarily placed in these unfortunate events as well. Now, 2 reasons why we win. Number 1, I just want to kick all their materials about moral responsibility. Yes, we can wait for others to complete the game. You don't have the moral obligation to them. You barely interacted with them. They never proved why moral responsibility to others is higher than a moral obligation to yourself. The moral obligation for you to live and the moral obligation you have to your loved ones to ensure that they don't lose one of the most important people that they have in their life. Now, the second most major clash within the debate is on the topic of the safety of these players and how we should beat the game. Prop constantly argues that, hey, we have a life to waste, a thrill to fulfill, a deadlust to satisfy. We, unlike Prop, though, acknowledge the reality of these towers and human nature, and that even as a skilled gamer surpassing all these levels, it is nearly impossible to do. Since Matthew, we argued for 5 structural reasons. First, a lack of predictability, which looks like not knowing what monster will eat you alive on the next floor. In addition to that, no second chance where you know when that monster will inevitably eat you. You will not come back to life to see your loved ones, to live a normal life, to literally be you. Number 3, furthermore, resources are finite no matter what. Since this is a virtual reality, you are a human trap, not a gamer just playing an average computer game where you can restart. Your bitten off hand will not come back after a set healing point. And fourth, you have to work with other players, which surprisingly proposition can in fact betray you. Why? Because they also want to live. They do not care. It is human nature to prioritize yourself. It's survival instincts. And 5, finally, you as a human has not only physical weaknesses, but psychological weaknesses as well. Mentally, you would get weaker when you literally see your friend's head gets destroyed right in front of your eyes, or anyone's at that point. I want to note that they can't just assert that you can strategize. No, you can't. You don't know what is ahead. Even though you can, that does not deny all the physical fatigue and emotional trauma that makes you unable to execute that game strategy. Though you already have a plan beforehand, there's no way to ensure that that it cannot be followed when there's so much pressure. Furthermore, this is an asymmetric war. You can't predict monsters' move. Literally, you don't know what they do. You don't know what game surprises. You don't know anything that there's in store for you, like what you have mentioned, etc. Another clash within this debate is on which world will the gamer live better. Proposition argues that their world is somehow better, but we prove to you why humans can adapt. Since Matthew, now they can adapt in 2 contexts. Number 1, first, in SAO, the virtual reality is that real, that they blur the lines between real and virtual. These virtual experiences are real and all their senses are still engaged. And second, humans have the ability to adapt to new environments. Players gradually adapt to the rules and lifestyles of the virtual world, which leads to a level of acceptance where the virtual world is seen as a valid living space. Their problem is they rely on the assumption that your life purpose is contingent to your current loved ones. Sure, we can care about them, but you can form new relationships with society there. You can find new friends. Maybe you'll fall in love again. You can find a new hobby, and you can probably work with other people. Now, these societies can also help you cope with this reality that you're in. And therefore, I proudly oppose. Thank you.
Yeah, the government, the opposition just finished. Reply.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. I would now be taking the prop reply to conclude the debate for us.
Can I confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. My speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. I'll be giving you 5 layers of analysis as to why opposition cannot win today's debate. Firstly, what does this new community in opposition that the opposition proposes look like? So like in Op's own analysis, all players want other players to die for them first because the whole like selfish incentive to survive. It should be the same, meaning that it's a backstabbing community that you cannot feel love or commitment to because you're not sacrificing anything for your counterparts. That's entirely different to our community where people, at least me, not afraid of death, want to do it for the team and for themselves as well. This inspires heroism and braveness. Secondly, they keep on capitalizing on the idea that it's not a prison and you still have freedom. Yes, a society is formed, but this society is one filled with people who don't have like the skill set or like the courage of challenging the tower. And nowhere in the info slide does it state that it's a meaningful society. Okay, so it's not a prison. You stay inside the bounds, but the moment you try to leave, the monsters and the bosses will kill you. That's the literal definition of a prison. Please listen to yourself. As long as you stay in the bounds of a prison, you're fine, right? But when you try to leave, the guards take you back. So we don't, please listen to yourself. They tell us that we think that people want access to a range of experience, and that's only possible if you have this freedom. The conclusion to this is that prison is a prison, no matter how pretty it is. You don't have a choice to exit the premises. Hence, it becomes a prison. Thirdly, 3 levels of inconsistencies and contradictions. A, they tell us that life is meaningful in and of itself because of the loved ones and things you care about. At the same time, they want the player to stay trapped in the game and forget the loved ones and things that they love. O2 then, all of a sudden, tells us that life is the most important and family and friends don't matter anymore because, well, I live for myself. But first of all, that's terribly selfish, and that's exactly what the game is designed for, to like try and manipulate people into thinking. And by following Op's thought process, you cave into this disgustingly manipulative higher power, which my second speaker has spent like majority of her speech analyzing. So then Op's meaning of life argument is 1, that you live for yourself, 2, you want happiness, and 3, you want to live. In response to our POI, he's neglecting 1 and 2 because in no way they prove how letting other people die can give you happiness. So now on moral inconsistencies, he then tells us that like you find new friends in the virtual world after you throw them away for them to die for him selfishly. What kind of friendship is that? We tell you it's not a friendship. It's just a place like 2 people, and you never be able to feel an actual commitment or love with one another. They tell us that your loved ones will grieve if you die, so like just don't die. I think your loved ones, knowing that there's a possibility of you coming out alive, seeing them, interacting with them again, and like knowing that you're actively sitting back and not taking this possibility is far, far worse than your loved ones knowing you died, giving it all to try and escape and to see them. Plus, in both worlds, like you end up dying either way. In Op's world, it's probably like you're dying of like old age. So like either way, your loved ones will grieve if you die. So like we think like it's just a wash. Fourth, let's talk about the case shift halfway through second speaker's speech. So now this incredibly skilled gamer wants to leave too, but then they want other players that are trapped in the game to die for them. This is incredibly selfish, and following this logic, Op will never win on the moral high ground. Is that a life you want to live as a human being with moral standards? But sure, let's do it for the sake of self-preservation. This still doesn't stand. Their entire speech is talking about how you can live in a meaningful society, right? This cannot exist because a meaningful society is only possible when you have individuals who are willing to sacrifice for one another. So what does opposition have left? A simple assertion: life is valuable. They don't care about happiness. They do not care about meaning. At the end of the day, they do not care about winning this debate. Let's just point out the severe lack of engagement and strategic inconsistencies. We have the whole what if we die argument given in the first speaker's speech completely unengaged with. It's funny they tell us that we haven't engaged with their 5 structural reasons, because what about our 5-level analysis on so what if you die argument? We preempted it before their first speaker even went, and their framing comes in like second speaker and the case shift. We think for all these reasons, then in no world can opposition win. For the purpose of moral standards, for the fight for freedom, for the sake of resistance and challenging oppression, we must and will win. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that fine speech, prop reply. Thank you, debaters, for your speeches. We will now go into deliberation and be done with the results. Thank you for making it a great round. Judges, please, can you join me in room 5 for the leaps?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the debate.